Hello and welcome back to our mini programming tutorial. Last time we left off with our test program which created a hoja and moved it. So if I run this, you can see that we've created a grid, it's put a little hoja on there and it moved it forward one space. Today we're going to be looking at expanding those concepts in order to draw a basic shape. I want to create a new program from the beginning so that we can start to understand what is going on a little bit more clearly. We're going to stay in the same project because we've already added the hoja library to this. So you can see over there, we've already taken this, we've already said add library. If I click on the little plus here, you can see it's there. So just to simplify life, but if you did create a new project, you'd have to right click add library and add the hoja library. So we're going to be creating a new program by creating a new class. And there's a few ways we can do this. So one of the ways you could do is this little white page over here with a green plus. You could click on that and it brings up the option to create a new file. There's a lot of different types of files we could choose. We're going to specifically create a Java class, so don't worry about that for now. Or what we can do, and this is what I'll probably be doing usually, is I'm going to right click over here on the package. So the package is the sort of like little yellow box thing. When I right click on it, it comes up and it gives me the option to create a few things. So I could create a new folder if I wanted to organize things into different folders, which I don't. A Java class, that's what we are going to use. And then everything else you really don't need to worry about for the rest of this course. So we're going to choose Java class. Now the first thing, and in fact the only thing we need to do when we're working through this, is to give our class a name. So it's a really good idea to give your programs descriptive names so that people know what's going on. So I'm going to call this draw square, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to draw a square. Now it's important to note that the class name cannot have spaces in it. If you try and put a space in, you can see over here we pop up with a little error saying that the class name is not valid. So let me just get rid of that space. The other thing you might have noticed is that I've used capital letters. So I start off with a capital letter for the class name, and then because I can't put any spaces in, when I get to the next word, I capitalize that letter as well. Now, this will work if I make everything lowercase, but firstly, the lowercase makes it a bit more challenging to read, and secondly, we have these conventions in Java that say when something starts with a capital letter, it is a class. So it's really important that you create your classes with the first letter capital. I will mark your work incorrect if you did choose to start a class with a lowercase letter, even though it would work perfectly. So now that I've given my class a name and I've made sure that the first letter is capitalized and that any additional words have an initial capital, I can click finish. So now what it's done is it's kept this in the package schoolwork. You really don't need to worry about packages from now. And it's created a new class called drawSquare. And currently there's nothing inside this class. Before we start putting things inside this class, I do want to talk about this little grayed out text here. So first off, if the text gets a little bit in your way, what you can do is these big blocks of grayed out text, you can actually minimize to hide them. And the other thing is that the reason for these grayed out blocks of text is just to give us some idea of what's going on. So we can create little notes for ourselves. And what happens is that Java ignores the notes so you can type anything there. So in this case, they've created a little block thing by going /* and then at the end, when they wanted to finish the comments, they said */. You can create a single line comment by just going //. You can see it immediately grays it out, and then you can type a little note yourself. So I've just said Java will ignore this, and you'll see when we run it, it's not going to come up with an error and say, hey, what does that mean, or anything. It's just going to ignore it. So if I try and run drawSquare, first off, because we created it in the same project, if I click run, you can see there's no instructions here, so what I'd expect to happen would be nothing. But you'll see our hoja pops up and it moves forward. So it looks like it's running the previous file. And that's in fact exactly what's happened. When we created this in the package schoolwork, this became the default class, so it's what gets run automatically. So if I want to run draw square, I have to right click and choose run. And when I do that, it's going to give me a little bit of an error, and it's going to say it doesn't have a main method. So when we're in a class, if you want to run the class, you need some way to tell Java what exactly, where it needs to start. And we do that by creating a main method. So there's this is a little bit, I don't want to say tricky, but it's a little bit fiddly or tedious. You have to type the following: public static void main open round bracket capital S string square bracket close square bracket args close round bracket open curly bracket. Now if I right click on draw square and I click run, you can see it says it was successful, doesn't come up with any errors, but it also doesn't do anything because we haven't told it to do anything. So now it's a little bit of a pain typing that all the time, and it can be a bit tricky to remember exactly what's going on. So I'm going to show you a little shortcut. Let's get rid of that. So you can do the following. You can type PSVM. That's public static void main. And then you can push tab. And it converts that into a main method for us. So that's just a little bit of a shortcut there. Now, if I want to run this, right click, run, check that it worked, that's fine. I could also choose run, and I could choose run file. So what I might do, because I found the keyboard a little bit quicker than right clicking with the mouse, I might on my keyboard just type Shift and F6. You can see over here, this is the shortcut. So you can't see me doing it, but on my keyboard, I just pushed Shift F6 and it ran. Okay, but it's not very exciting having a program that doesn't do anything, so let's make it do something. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a hoja. And this is going to give me a little bit of an error, but it's fine. So I'm going to say hoja. The hoja tells us what type of thing we want to create. We want to create one of those weird insect things that pop up in draw, so we're creating a hoja. You'll notice that hoja starts with a capital letter, so that means that hoja is its own class. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about what classes and so on do a little bit later. And then I need to give my hoja a name, and I can call it anything I want. One thing I do insist though is that you give it a lowercase letter. So I'm going to call mine James, just why not? Normally we'd choose a name that means something, but certainly for the hoja, I can't really think of anything that does mean anything, so I'll call it James. Notice that even though I used a proper name and everything, I used a lowercase letter. Once again, Java would work if I used an uppercase letter, but we use uppercase letters for classes, and we use lowercase letters for variables and objects. Don't worry about what a variable and an object is for now. Just know that James is an object. Equals, okay? And now I just want to point out over here that this equal sign is not the equal sign you've been using in mathematics. The equal sign in mathematics means the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side. This is an assignment equals. So what it's saying is take whatever's on the right and make the left equal to that. So I say new hoja. And this has to be a capital letter because it is the class. So what I'm doing over here is I'm saying let's create a new hoja, and then let's make James equal to the new hoja. And you can see we've got an error. And if I hover over the error, it says it cannot find symbol. And the reason for that is because we haven't told Java to include all the hoja things. So I fixed that by going to package schoolwork, going to the very next line and choosing import it.star. Okay, so import statements have to come after package, and you can't put them inside the class. And you'll see now that the red vanishes. There's still a little squiggly line over here, and it says that James is not used, and that's because we're not doing anything with it. We're creating a new one, but we're not doing anything with it. So if I run it though, you'll see that we created, if you click run, it runs the default file. So what I actually want to do is either right click and choose run file. And there we go. You can see my hoja is created and it doesn't do anything. Or you can push Shift F6. Okay. There's another way that we could have created James. So I could have done this as well. I could have said Jorge James. And let's see what happens if I run this. If I run this, it doesn't do anything. So we've said we want a Jorge James. But remember what I said about the equal statement. I said the equal statement says, let's put something into the left. So currently, there's nothing on the left. But I could say James is going to be a new Jorge. Now if I run this, you're pushing Shift F6, you can see it creates my Jorge for me. So I do recall, when I was going through this in class, everyone laughs every time I say Jorge, so I'm just going to call this dude James for now because hopefully there'll be a little bit less laughter. So what I want to do with James is I want to make him draw a square. So let's say we're going to make him draw a 3 by 3 square. So I'm going to say James dot move. And what that does is it makes James move one space. So if I wanted to make it move 3 spaces, you might think that we can do something like move 3, but if I type move 3, it comes up, it's an error, it can't find that. Or maybe I put a little bit of a 3 in here. Once again, it's an error. So it looks like we're stuck to moving just 1 space at a time. So if I want James to move 3 times, I have to type it out 3 times. Now when I run the program, for crying out loud, I'm using the wrong one. Now when I run the program, you can see that James moves 3 spaces. What you could also have done, if you didn't want to type James.move 3 times, is after typing it the first time, you could have cut. So I'm going to use Control-C to cut. And on the new line, Control-V to paste. And I'll just paste it twice. Now, how do I get James to start drawing the rest of the square? So he's moved 3 spaces. And I just want to point out over here that if you've got a really long picture going, you can speed it up a little bit so you don't have to wait. You can also slow it down if you can see there's a problem and you want to try and figure out where it is. What I can do is I can say James.turn right. Let's see what that does. So he moves forward 1, 2, 3, and then turns right. So take note that when I turned right, I didn't draw a line going right. My bug, or James, just turned right to look right. So when I choose move now, I suspect that James is going to move forward 1 space. So let's try that again. So I want James to move forward 3 spaces. So let's just copy. So I pushed Control-C to copy and paste. Let's see if that worked. And once again, I ran the wrong thing. So I'm just going to choose Shift F6. And there we go. James has moved 3 spaces. He's turned right, and then he's moved forward another 3 spaces. I'm just going to do something quickly. You can ignore this if you want. But so, when I click on the run button, it's automatically running the schoolwork. And you can see that because it's still moving forward once. And I've done it about 3 times in a row. So what I can do is I can choose over here, underneath run, I can go to set project configuration, customize, and I can change the main class from schoolwork to draw square. So now what happens when I click run is it actually runs the file I'm using. Don't worry if you didn't understand that, but it's going to save me a bit of frustration. Now I want to do the same thing again. And in fact, let's visualize this. So let's do it with the Jorge on screen. So I now want to go down. So if you take a look at the perspective of the bug, he could either turn left and then he'd be going up, or he could turn right and he'd be going down. So if I wanted to create stairs, I'd turn left here. But I want to create a square. I want to go for a square, so let's go down. So I want to turn right. So once again, James.turn right, James.move, James.move, James.move. And you might have noticed there's an opportunity here, in fact, to just copy and paste. So let's try that out. Okay, so now, I want James to start going to the left to finish drawing the square. It is important to notice, though, that James is in fact facing down. So even though from my perspective I want James to go left, James's perspective, he's actually going to be going right. So if you sort of like turn yourself or your head upside down and you picture where your hands would be, you can actually see that we want to turn right, even though from our perspective, James will be going left. So once again, it's a straightforward copy and paste. Okay, so if we run this now, we can see that we draw a complete square. I'm just going to speed this up. I don't recommend speeding it up if you're debugging, you're trying to see what's going on, but once you know you've got everything working and you just want to get out of the way, it is a good thing to do. So congratulations if you are able to follow along. For homework, I'd like you to do a few things. I'd like you to try and make the square a bit bigger. See if you can do that. See if you can make it a 4x4 square. See if you can make it a 5x3 rectangle. So those are two things I'd like you to do. And then the last thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to draw your initials. So the first letter of your first name and then the first letter of your surname. Now, if you're doing that and we're starting over here, you're going to have a problem because you're definitely going to run out of space, especially if you're trying to draw two letters, unless you make them really tiny. So I'm going to show you a new Khocha command that you can have. So over here, what I could do is I could say James.set position, open bracket, and then this is the first Khocha method that we're actually going to put something inside the brackets. And what I can do over here is I can type 1, 2. So if I do that, you can see that James moves to 1, 2, and in fact that's exactly where he shouldn't have gone. If I want to start over here, in fact, I want him to move 1 across, 8 down. So a little bit of a mistake there. Let's change that to 1 and 8. Now if I run it, you can see we're drawing our square over here, over there. So we've got plenty of space to draw our initials. The other thing you want to do, because let's say you draw, well, in fact, let's just say that my first initial was an O. Once I'm done here, I want to move my Khocha over here, say, for example, but I don't want to draw a line there. So what I do there, when I want to stop drawing or start drawing again, is I say over here, in fact, let's do it over here so we can see what's going on. I'll say James dot trail off. And if I do that and I run it, you can see that James is still going to move, but he's going to stop drawing. So you can see we've only got that one line there. How would I tell James to start drawing again? Let's make him draw just before the last thing. I'll say James dot trail on. If I do that, you should see that we'll draw the first line. Then we told him to stop drawing while he's drawing the next two lines, and then we told him to start drawing again for the last line. In fact, that gives us a nice L, bit of a waste of a way to do the L, but hopefully now you should be able to get your initials.